channel. I'm Jen at KetosisMom, and today I'm going to be going over all the different types of GLP-1 medications that are currently FDA regulated and approved medicines. I'm also going to go over a couple that are in the pipeline that I think are noteworthy, and you should probably watch them, especially when they post their phase 3 clinical trial final results. I think that they're going to be very promising in the future. I'm also going to be going over which one of the drugs are for diabetic patients and which one of the drugs are slotted for weight loss patients. I've been promising you all for a while that I was going to do a comparison of both the Zepbound and the Wegovy back when I was trying to figure out if I wanted to switch over to Wegovy during the drug shortage. Since then, the FDA shortage list has been updated multiple times, and the titration that I specifically am on and have been on is no longer listed in shortage. So I'm going to be staying on Zepbound. I'm currently on 2.5 milligrams. I have the 5 milligrams to start taking here close in the future. I have one more week left of the 2.5 milligram, and I will be showing you all my injection from today as well later in this video. This is just a nice reminder that this is a sponsored video. We are sponsored today again by my vitamins from Gym at dailygym.com/KetosisMom. They are offering my audience 50% off using the code KetosisMom. You'll hear a little bit more about them later on in the video. So who's ready to get started? Today I want to start out with a little bit of what I call feel-good things. I forgot to mention this to you all during my last video that was reviewing my vacation that I had at Yellowstone, and I cannot believe that I forgot to mention this to you all because I was so excited. I watched other people getting on the plane looking super nervous like I typically did because they were having to ask for a seatbelt extender. And if you all have never had to do this before on an airplane, number one, it makes you feel embarrassed, or it makes me feel embarrassed. Number two, there's only so many extenders that they're going to have on that plane. And if you cannot buckle in on an airplane, then they can and will ask you to get off of the airplane for safety purposes, and you have to rebook a separate flight. Or they may even ask you to book 2 seats so that you can then use double belts, which I have seen them do with people before. They have told them, hey, we are not a full flight. You are going to have to pay for a second seat on this flight in order to be able to buckle in. It's not fun. It's not pretty. And I got super excited. First of all, I have my own seatbelt extender, and I will tag it below just so that you guys might want to grab one for yourself and just carry it with you just in case. I have noticed that some flights, the seatbelts are much smaller, much smaller than other flights. It also depends on which seat you're in. Are you in like economy main class? Are you in what they call like their comfort or their premium? Are you in first class? It all depends on what type of plane you're on as well. So I always carry one with me just in case, because I don't like the embarrassment of even having to ask the flight attendant for one. This is the first flight that I have been on in years that I did not have to have one. I hope that you're all clapping because this was a big win for me. This was a big non-scale win for me. I typically was having to kind of like put it and try to like lift my stomach and fit it in there, especially when we went to London with our girls. It's very embarrassing for me to have to do that even in front of my children, and they're asking like, why doesn't it fit? And so this was the first flight that I have not had to do that, and I even had extra room with the seatbelt. So that is a huge non-scale win for me, and I would love for you all to comment down below any new non-scale wins that you have had since the last time you commented, or if this is your first time watching, go ahead and put any of your non-scale wins down below. It can be anything from I've stopped drinking so much soda to I fit in a new dress, which I did also have that happen as well. You all know that I am being clothed by McDowell Clothes for my YouTube videos, and they had sent me a size large in one of the outfits that I thought for sure there is no possible way I'm going to be able to fit in this. I did fit in it. I even have extra room in it, just slightly. And my sister-in-law told me that she saw it on me and thought that it was made, like custom made for me. So I've had a lot of non-scale wins, like feel-good type moments lately. And so I'd love to hear what your all feel-good type moments lately have been, especially if you are on your own weight loss journey. So tell me in the comments below. So weeks ago, I had told you all that I was considering switching over to Wegovy from Zepbound. And originally, before I really kind of delved into what I even wanted to try or was willing to try, I had done a lot of research. And so I went back and I pulled up my own little Excel sheet that I will put up for you all here as well so that you can see. Basically what I did is I looked at what all the different medicine types were that were GLP-1s, and then I kind of narrowed it down from there for myself. And if you all want me to go back in and put in some of the results from these other clinical trials that were for the diabetic side, just let me know down in the comments. I am more than happy to go find all that and fill the rest of this in for you. For my purposes, I basically narrowed down this list from the Tirzepatides, the semaglutides, the liraglutide, I believe is what it is, the dulaglutide, the azenatide, the lixesintide. I'm probably butchering most of those names. I basically went through this myself and said, okay, out of all of these, what are the ones that I would be able to qualify for to be able to get my insurance covered for? Which is only the ones that are specific for weight loss, right? My insurance is not going to cover for me to go take Mounjaro because I'm not diabetic. And as a matter of fact, if you all remember, when my initial endocrinologist was submitting for me to get this, they were submitting for Mounjaro and the insurance was immediately denying it because I am not diabetic. I then had to go back to her office and say, no, it's the Tirzepatide that is the new approved for weight loss called Zepbound. Then they had to resubmit for Zepbound. Long story short, the office here could not get it done, and then that's why I went with Weight Watchers Clinic, because I discussed for over an hour, it's probably more like an hour and a half, with my Weight Watchers Clinic, medical doctor who specializes in weight loss. She knew exactly what Zepbound was. She agreed that that's probably what I should be going on. She agreed that her patients were doing really well on it, and then we had further discussions about what the clinical trial data really meant, and really going through all of it so that she could tell me, if you ever experience this, then you need to make sure you go straight to a hospital. If you start experiencing these things, she basically said, I don't expect you to start experiencing this until closer to like the 5 or the 7.5 milligram dose per what's going on in the clinical trial. So I had a really great conversation with my Weight Watchers Clinic doctor, and it was probably the only physician that I've spoken to even to date that I felt like was knowledgeable on these drugs, enough to be able to conversate on them, have conversations, and then also not cut me off and then tell me, well, you might still have to have gastric bypass one day. Because even my local endocrinologist told me, when I was there, a lot of patients are going on these GLP-1 drugs before going for their gastric bypass surgery just to try to get their weight down to be able to qualify for the surgery. Then they go have their gastric bypass. And I've seen a lot in my comments from people last week about how they have friends who have gone for gastric bypass and then they have started these drugs, and that their friend was on these GLP-1s before gastric bypass and they were doing great and had lost weight, and then once they came off of them, even after having their gastric bypass surgery, they were really struggling to eat correctly. They were really struggling with cravings. And so I personally feel like eventually, as a society, people are going to say, I would much rather just go on this medication than I would have a surgery that I could potentially have complications. I could, not succeed at this, basically. And so throughout today, I'm going to be showing you guys some things that I feel like not only are our rheumatologists, our osteo doctors, so people who are doing knee replacements, hip replacements, our gastric bypass surgeons. I feel like a lot of our medical doctors are going to start getting a little irritable because their amount of surgeries could drastically start going down because of people losing weight. And the fact of the matter is that a healthy person, it costs much less to maintain medically than a person who is not necessarily considered healthy, that is obese, that has other underlying conditions as well, or conditions that are caused by or from their obesity, such as your knee osteoporosis. Sleep apnea is also something we'll cover today. Your hip replacement, your gastric bypass surgeries. And so really the only doctors that I have seen excited about a lot of this are the non-surgical osteopathic doctors. So I used to know one that was in South Carolina. I think he also taught at their college. His father was a surgeon and, did all the knee replacements and hip replacements and things like that. And he focused on the non-surgical side, which was what can we do to try to prevent that from happening, or what can we do to try to mitigate this from happening. And those are really the only doctors that I'm seeing that are like, whoa, this is a game changer. If I could get my patients on a GLP-1 that helps with inflammation, that helps with cartilage damage, that helps get their weight down so there's less stress on all their joints, those are the only doctors currently that I'm seeing like excited by this. I digress. So going back to my chart, once I filter through for just the FDA approved for weight loss, I was left with Tirzepatide, semaglutide, and the liraglutide, which is your Saxenda, for instance. And so as I started looking through each one of the clinical trials on these, of course, I was asking my husband a lot of questions. I said, okay, and this might be a question that all of you have as well. And I'm going to put this up bigger as I talk. So for the Tirzepatide and Zepbound, they did a clinical trial on patients that had a BMI of 30 or over, which all of these clinical trials did, right? They weren't focused on diabetic patients. They were focused on just patients who are considered obese. They tested and they have results showing for the 5, 10, and 15 milligram on their clinical trial, although they have titration levels starting at 2.5 for loading doses all the way up to the 15, including sometimes you might even see a 12.5 kind of hanging out around in there. And over a 72-week period, they had close to 20.9% weight loss for the patients who were on the larger dosage in this 72 weeks. Now, there's been a lot of kind of back and forth from people about, okay, yeah, but what happens after the 72 weeks? And when I was originally looking at this and trying to figure out which one of these drugs I wanted to go with, I have a lot of weight that I have to lose. I've gained, it was like close to 40, if not over 40 pounds while on my autoimmune disease. And I'm just now getting to where I told my husband, okay, I had my first rheumatology appointment and I saw the picture pop up on my Facebook memories just yesterday or day before yesterday. I said, this was my first rheumatology appointment that then the rheumatologist canceled on me and said, hey, you don't have anything. And then I had to reschedule and go to someone else. And from right now until before that day, I'm just now getting back to the weight that I was then before I started all these autoimmune treatments. And even at that point in time, we had moved from one state to another. And then my husband found out 3 days into the job that they decided to contract the job out for 10 plus years for another pharmaceutical facility to manufacture it for them instead of building their own. So they knew before they moved my family there that it wasn't a job anymore, and they moved us there anyway. And then we had to just try to find something new from there. So it was like a small stint where we were, and then we had to pick up and move again, which was very stressful for me. And I think when I look at my weight scale during that time, I had gained almost 30 pounds throughout that process of like not knowing where I'm going to live, not knowing where my things are going to go, not knowing where my kids are going to school. And stress can really wreak havoc on you. And so we're talking at an excess of well over 70 pounds that I was needing to lose. And in reality, if I were to try and get down to what doctors say is the, medically acceptable range for my height, We're talking about a whole lot more than 70 pounds. Okay, so I had a lot of weight to lose, and seeing that almost 21% in patients, even though they were at the higher levels, was kind of impressive to me. And then when I looked at their charts, I mean, even the lower doses, you're sitting around 15 or 16%, which is what you got from the semaglutide and the Wegovy on their clinical trial. So what I looked at for them was in 68 weeks, they were giving their 2.4 milligram, which is the Wegovy semaglutide titration that you get for the weight loss side, and they were at 14.9% in 68 weeks. So as far as the lower dosage, which I know that I would like to stay at the lower dosages to try to lose weight, I'm not necessarily like, oh, give me the 15 right now because I'm trying to lose as much weight as possible. If you guys have not noticed from watching me, I'm trying to lose a little at a time. My doctors like that I'm losing a little at a time. I'm not losing what the Weight Watchers Clinic originally told me was the 6% a month before they move me up. Basically, I feel like, though, however, it's because things have been in shortage. So I've been forced to stay at a smaller titration for a longer period of time. And personally, I'm okay with that. I'm still losing. I'll tell you all my week 18 results towards the end of this video. I also looked at the Saxenda or a liraglutide, which there are more studies on it now. They did the 3 milligram injection. They have everything from a 0.6 milligram up to a 3 milligram for their titration levels. And their clinical trial to me was not very, I don't want to say it was not very good, but it was not very precise. They kind of said, oh, they had between around approximate 5 and 10%. It wasn't, you had to really dig into their clinical trial. And I'm going to put each one of these from the New England Journal of Medicine, where it pulls up the full clinical trial PDF for you, down in my links below in the captions. Because when I first started looking at this, I had no idea what I was really looking for. I had no idea what my options were. I did not have a doctor saying, hey, here's information on each one of these. Here's my opinion. Here's what I think you should do. Here's what to look for in their clinical trials and some of their adverse effects and things to note. I did not have anyone doing that with me. And in reality, that's pretty bad, right? I feel like our doctors have really just slipped right downhill. I feel like this should be a conversation, much like when I used to work at one of the largest cancer centers in the world. Our oncologist job was to review what the different treatment options were with the patient, explain to them the benefits and what some of the downsides of each one of the treatments were, give them information on each one of those so that they knew and could make an educated decision on which direction they felt like they should go, along with our oncologist or our radiologist or our surgeons or our specialists, any of their opinions, and tie it all together and then say, let us know which direction you want to go. When you call back to schedule, you can let them know which treatment plan you have chosen. And they received multiple different treatment plans. That's what I'm used to, and that's kind of what my expectations were, which I'm sure unrealistic, but it really was a great facility that I worked for, and in hindsight I can kind of see that now, especially being a patient at other places. And I get that this is not cancer, don't get me wrong, I get that this is not cancer and this is not brain science to go and figure out, and you can go look it up all yourself, but I feel like we pay so much money to go to these specialists that there should be more of a conversation and not like a just here, this is what you're going to be taking. And that's part of my my kind of bias, I guess, about all these kickbacks that doctors are getting, or these bonuses that they're getting for putting so many patients on this one drug, or they get so used to just prescribing the same drug over and over and over again that they don't go back and look anymore into the drug after they initially begin prescribing it. And today I'm not going over any type of compounded medicines. I want to make sure that everybody knows that. I'm not going over compounds. I'm going over the brand name FDA regulated GLP-1 drugs. But I will tell you all, just like I've told you all on the compound side, you do want to periodically still go back and look into the FDA investigations and the FDA 483s and the warning letters and their inspections of each of these facilities, the Novo Nordisk, the Eli Lilly, even on the compound side, the pharmacies that they're going into. I will tell you all that typically in my experience in pharmaceuticals, the FDA likes to pop in around June, July, and August. So the blog post that I did write, I will tell you all on compounds, and I'm going to do a similar blog post that's going to also be on Eli Lilly and Novo Nordisk, just so that you guys have that information and you can go look at it. So probably next week I'll have that for you all and I'll post that up. But you do, the links that I have over in this even compounded with the Emerge pharmacy that I get you guys the $50 off with the link below. You want to periodically go back and click on those links because, you know, let's just say Empower Pharmacy. While when I looked at it, it may have said one thing. After this summer, if the FDA pops up again or the state pops up again and does a new inspection, there might be some new information there that you might want to go look at. I do know that there should be a lot more oversight of the compounded side. I do know that in manufacturing with these, I have seen that the FDA is kind of giving them like this, like fast track, like, okay, fast track it, we need it. Okay, fast track this, we need this. However, even with those checks to move forward, the FDA is still going to be popping up and coming and looking at things. And I do know that between June and August is typically their time that they like to, hey, we're here, spring up. So make sure that you're going back and looking at links of everything at any time, because you could be watching this a year from now and what I had written on some of those things might be completely different. And so that's why I do want to go back in for you all now as well, since I did it for the compound side. I'm also going to pull all the information from the FDA, their investigations, their audits, make notes for you all in a blog post for both Novo Nordisk and Eli Lilly. And I will put that over on my website for you all as well. I do think it's important to kind of see what they're being audited for, what's being found there, because overall you need to be comfortable with your choice. You know, I chose Eli Lilly's Zepbound based off of their clinical trial data. And I did put down below in my videos to watch this week, there is a doctor that I saw on YouTube, and I think you guys should go watch this, because as I was watching this with him, I thought to myself, okay, he has a really good point here. He is only prescribing his patients at this time with Tirzepatide. And the reason that he does Tirzepatide is because he did say that and I'm going to put this in a link for you all down below as well. These are all the adverse events that happened with each one of these clinical trial studies, which will be linked there from the New England Journal of Medicine. Anyone can find these and review these. You can also look at clinicaltrials.gov and pull up the full clinical trial if you really want to dig into things. However, he did go in here and say, okay, with Tirzepatide, you're looking at the same nausea, diarrhea, and abdominal pain with vomiting. However, you're not really starting to see anything with that as far as their clinical trial data goes until you get up to the higher dosages, which is their 10 and 15. And he said on the lower dosages that I can give people and get them started and start getting them on the right track of eating how they should be eating and exercising how they should be exercising, because he does emphasize, same thing that I did, maintaining your muscle mass, making sure that you're working out so that you're not losing muscle. Then he said there was a lot less on his mind when it comes to the Tirzepatide. He also focused in on the pancreatitis on this and said, okay, if you zoom in on their pancreatitis information, there was 1 at 5, 1 at 10, 1 at 15, but there was also 1 in the placebo group. So for some of this, as I'm looking at it, I'm thinking to myself, okay, for let's say headaches, was there really good data going into the study for their N, or their number of people in each section that were starting in each section, that already had these things as kind of like a pre-existing condition that they had, or are they solely attributing it to this medicine? And that's what's really hard when you start looking at these clinical trial studies, is you don't really know, like, did this person already have pancreatic issues before they started taking this medicine that may have been undiagnosed, and then this just kind of exacerbated it? Or was it fully caused by this? And that's something that he discusses in his video. And when you go through all of the different, I even looked at the gallbladder stuff. You guys know that my internist, or the PA that was there, said, oh, we don't like anybody who has gallbladder issues to be taking this, because there's a cholecystitis, and there's all kinds of issues where people who are having to have their gallbladders removed. And I'm looking at her going, I've already had my gallbladder removed. Yeah, my daughter, when I was pregnant, decided that was going to be her kicking bag, and she kicked it till it was ready to get out of there and got infected. And that is actually common in pregnancies. And so I have no gallbladder. And then she started telling me, oh, but wait, there could be other issues, and it just, you guys know how I felt about that appointment, right? I also did pull the information, and it is, again, all below, for the Saxenda. And I'm going to be very honest with you all. I had watched, I believe it was also an Australian YouTube, and I'm going to go back to my watch history list, and I'm going to try to find this. And I have an Aussie who watches that might know what I'm talking about and might be able to find it for me as well if I can't for some reason. But I had just watched basically what is, like their Dateline here, or their like investigative reports that we have here. I had just watched something about like multiple deaths in Australia from Saxenda patients. Just like all of a sudden they got stomach pain and then they died. And that honestly scared me a little bit. And I didn't, because of that, I'm going to tell you all, because of that, I had a little bit of a bias over Saxenda and the liraglutide. And so that kind of made me not want to take that one and not risk it. And when I started looking into their clinical trial data, they're looking at an N of almost 2,500 people, and then they had a placebo of a little over 1,200 people. They have a lot of the same things as far as, of course, the GI upset issues, your nausea, your diarrhea, your constipation, your vomiting. But they also had some upper abdominal pain that was, closer to like 6% of their group. They did have upper respiratory tract infection that was around, 9% of their group. They had nasopharyngitis that was around 17.2%. They did have the cholecystitis, like acute. They also had different types of pancreatitis with their group as well that was just slightly higher. It was acute pancreatitis that was just slightly higher than what the Tirzepatide had. And so I just got off of, you guys gotta remember, when I first started this, I just got off of about 6 months worth of antibiotics throughout my Humira and Enbrel like testing process of which autoimmune treatment I was going to be doing. I had 6 months of steroids and antibiotics, like different antibiotics, strong antibiotics. I mean, I think I ended that whole thing with over 20 days on an augmentin and steroid pill just to try to finally just like kick it and get rid of it. And so when I started seeing some of these like upper respiratory tract infection type things with the Saxenda, that immediately, for me personally, just like it marked it off my list. And when I'm looking at the one that is for Tirzepatide, I did not see any of that listed on their clinical trial study, like adverse effects. And so that immediately kind of like bumped Tirzepatide up. So then I started looking at the one for Wegovy. And I told you guys a couple weeks ago, I was considering going back to Wegovy, right? And so let's look at this one too. one is for the semaglutide and Wegovy, and this is their adverse effects. Now, they have an N for their semaglutide that is around 1,300, and the placebo is around just above 650. And so when you're looking at theirs specifically, there is something that really stuck out to me on their clinical trial results. And I asked my husband, wait a minute, like, how can I find out what that meant and what it was they were looking at? There's at the very bottom, it says psychiatric disorders. And when I click next to it, typically that means that there is a note there and you should be able to go and look at that note. However, there is not a note linked to their little symbol that is right there. The note that comes up is actually for a separate one that has to do with the gallbladder disorders. And so I don't have a note, and I don't know what they are referring to with psychiatric disorders, but when they have 9.5% with some type of psychiatric disorder, that kind of like triggered me a little bit, like, oh, okay, wait, I need to look at that. They also had acute renal failure. While it was, 0.2, only 3 people, I did look at the others, and while they had renal events, it was not exactly renal failure. Okay. The other thing for this with the gallbladder related disorders, while they are relatively low, well under 3% of their population for the gallbladder orders, it was a safety focus area that they were looking at. And so when you see that something is a safety focus area, then, or an area of special interest, or events occurring that they already know may happen in more or equal to 5% of their patients, it means that that is something that they have possibly done other clinical trials on at a higher dose, for instance, and then they've pulled things back into like a more like safety dose range, and then they want to see if these type of same events happen at a lower, safer dose as well. And so that kind of like stood out to me a little bit. They did have a lot of also the abdominal pain, and then also upper respiratory. And the abdominal pain with Tirzepatide really did not begin until you got to the 10 and 15 milligrams compared to the Wegovy. And then you also have, of course, the nasopharyngitis in over 21%. You have the constipation, vomiting, diarrhea, nausea that you have in all of them. However, they were at slightly higher percentages of the participants. I mean, we're talking like 44% with nausea versus a 24% with nausea that is at the Tirzepatide. And so I'm not trying to like sell you all on which GLP-1 medicine you should be going for. I'm trying to do a full explanation of you all of how I came to I want to try the Tirzepatide. And this was kind of like my step-by-step process of what I did. Obviously first I'm going to go look and say, okay, what are all the drugs? Like, what's the full list of drugs that are considered GLP-1 that are currently FDA approved? I mean, there's even previously been a pill, a semaglutide pill that was pulled from the market that I did not even look at because I knew that it had already been pulled. And so I really, for weight loss specifically, I really only had 3 that I was looking at. And when I'm looking at the adverse effects and I'm looking at the results, the Tirzepatide was kind of the clear winner for me. And so when I started trying to figure out what was it about Wegovy that I said no to originally, like, was it something small? Was it, what was it? And I wanted to go back and look at that. And so for me personally, I don't think that I would switch from a Zepbound to Wegovy or a Tirzepatide to a semaglutide for the reasons within the company's own clinical trial studies. I would like to stay on the Tirzepatide. Now I am going to show you all also kind of like what I call the pipeline. There's 2 right here that are coming in the pipeline, and I'm going to be watching these, and I've discussed them before. The Retatrutide that is from Eli Lilly, it is kind of what they're calling like a 3-fer, right? They are looking at a clinical trial that is over BMI of 30, whereas the CagriSema or I say CagriSema from Novo Nordisk, they're looking at diabetic patients only. within their clinical trial study that I was able to find on this right now, that's entering into their phase 3. So you're looking at the kind of the pipeline of like, this one is for obese patients. This one is for diabetic patients. And as far as the FDA is concerned, they're not going to kind of like cross the two. It's like, okay, you did your study for this specific set of patients, and then they would have to do further studies to possibly get a different version of the CagriSema for obesity patients, and maybe they name it something different, right? But the CagriSema is a 2.4 semaglutide, so basically Wegovy, with a 2.4 cagrilintide, okay? Or cagrilintide, sorry, 2.4 cagrilintide, which is amylin. So there's also some amylin studies by itself, just so that you guys know. Amylin is basically affecting a different portion of your brain. And so for the people that Wegovy or Tirzepatide is just not working for them, and in reality, there's a large population of people that it does not work for. And if you're one of those people, I would love for you guys to comment down below, you know, what about it did not work for you? Were you just taking it and you're never losing weight? Were you taking it and never getting any type of like benefit of not feeling hungry or not wanting to still eat? What was it about it that did not work for you? I would love to know it in the comments down below from anyone who has tried a GLP-1 and it did not work for them. But the amylin side of this and the combination of the GLP-1 with amylin is basically affecting multiple parts of the brain to try to create that satiety, like you're satiated, you are full. And so they're finding that amylin alone is even working away from the GLP-1. And so I did see in the news this week, we're going to get to in the news soon, that Zealand Pharmaceuticals is developing their own just amylin kind of weight loss drug that they are getting approved for different things over, I believe it's for MASH. And so they're kind of getting a check mark to move forward with that. And so you're going to start seeing a lot of these like different kind of like mix and matches of drugs. The retatrutide is also like a mix and match of drugs. It's still the GLP-1, the GIP, and then I believe it's like a GPP, glucagon, it's glucagon something. I will look that up and put it right here for you guys. And so those are kind of what's entering into the phase 3 right now of potential like next available for both diabetic or obese patients. And so when you're looking at all of these different adverse effects within their clinical trial, you're going to notice basically all of them, even the ones that are just now entering in phase 3, they're all having that GI upset with them, some type of GI upset. You're having nausea, you're having diarrhea, you have constipation, you're having abdominal pain, you're having vomiting. And so a lot of times you can speak with a GI specialist about some of those things, but it might even be as simple as making sure that you're getting the right vitamins within your body. And so I want to tell you guys a little bit more about Gym. I do take these. This is my last bag for this month, so I've got to get replenished on these. But these are whole food vitamins. So you're getting all of your nutrients, your vitamins, your minerals, everything from real whole food ingredients within these vitamins. I take these every single morning just because my main focus is always on protein. And sometimes I'm not really focused on getting those 4 other, you know, vegetables, fruits. Basically my colors are the rainbow, right? And so for me, this is just a little tasty treat that helps me get there. And they are our sponsor today on today's video. So we're going to take a little break for our sponsor.
Let's have breakfast. Did you know that over 90% of Americans are nutrient deficient, even if they eat the entire rainbow throughout their day? It can be extremely difficult to get all the nutrients that you need from your diet alone because our food sources are not as nutrient dense as they used to be. Gym is a multivitamin. It's actually more than a multivitamin. It's packed with over 20 vitamins and minerals, superfoods, probiotics, and prebiotics, everything that you need that can help support your energy, digestion, healthier hair, skin, and nails, and overall long-term holistic health goals. Gym can help you fill in the gaps in your daily diet with real whole food source nutrients that your body knows, loves, and it's all in one single delicious bite. My main focus every single day is making sure that I try to hit those protein goals. I'm also trying to make sure that I eat multiple different colors of the rainbow, but if I can ensure that I get my B vitamins through quinoa through this delicious little bite, or vitamin K2 through chickpeas, amongst other vitamins and minerals, that's something that I'm definitely going to do every single morning just to have peace of mind for myself that I'm getting what I need.
Hopefully you guys can take advantage of that 50% off. And if you do, comment down below. Let me know what you guys think of them as soon as you taste them. I would love to hear what you all think they taste like as well. To me, I love, and I have always loved lemon bars that, you know, they're like the old school like treat I used to make when I was little. And they do taste like a lemon bar to me, just with like a little bit of maybe like orange zest. And so I love taking these every single morning. And it's no big thing. And it's not, you know, like I'm having to go get like a whole bunch of like synthetic and additive like capsules and everything. And I'm always kind of thinking now about how long things are truly sitting in my stomach, and whether or not certain things should sit that long in my stomach. And so knowing that I'm getting all the vitamins and minerals from a whole food source, I don't even think about it anymore. So now we're going to head over to in the news. So GLP-1 in the news with Jen. I want to cover a few things today, so buckle up. The first thing is we have our first generic. Yes, our first generic out on the market that has been approved. So if you're watching these segments for reasons to invest in stock, thank you for paying attention. And if you were paying attention, you probably already tripled your money if you were to have invested in Eli Lilly, because now their stock is well over $900 per share. When I first started this, I believe they were around $300 per share. So if you were to invest, you've now tripled your money and all of that. But Teva, I say Teva, it might be Teva, but Teva is our first generic of Victoza, which is a liraglutide. However, it is not for weight loss patients. It is currently the generic for our diabetic friends. This is promising to me to see this, however, that there are generics that are coming out. I did cover in previous weeks that Novo Nordisk is losing their patent for semaglutide in China because there's about 10 or 11 different manufacturers who are already going through clinical trials and submitting to their regulatory body that they are ready to go with their clinical trial results of their generics of a semaglutide in China. And part of that is they are also looking at osteoarthritis with some of these generic medicines, and with liraglutide as well as semaglutide. So in Shanghai specifically, I'm going to put up, there is a study that they're doing right here with a liraglutide that is for knee osteoarthritis. It shows very promising results as well. I did already tell you guys that Zealand Pharmacy is developing and are getting approved their own amylin-based weight loss drug. It is called a petrelintide, just so that you guys know about that. You can invest in Zealand Pharmaceuticals depending on which investing firm you go with. They are no longer available on Robinhood, but they are available over on E-Trade. There are more lawsuits. Go figure. In the United States, between Novo Nordisk and Eli Lilly, going after more of the med spas, more of the compounders, more of what they are calling counterfeit weight loss and diabetic medication out to the general public. Now that their drugs are no longer in shortage with the FDA at the 2.5 and 5 milligram level specifically, I believe also at the 15 milligram level, once all of those milligrams for titration levels are completely removed for tirzepatide and semaglutide off of the FDA list, they are going to have much more footing and backing with the FDA enforcing FDAC, of course, and then also potentially the states having to get involved to make compounders cease and desist. This is going to be a very long battle unless they do, like I said previously, what Australia has done, and they set forth a future date that basically just says after, like with Australia, October 2024, there will be no more compounding allowed to enter our country. There will also no longer be allowed compounding within our country, and that's basically due to the safety precautions of their regulatory body, the TGA over in Australia. If you did not watch that video from previous weeks, please, please, please go watch it. It is, I will put it in the must watch or other must watch videos down below. I saw a couple of people finally coming back and commenting on that. I know that I put a lot of things up with a lot of links for you guys to go look at, and it can be a little overwhelming sometimes, but this is for sure one that I do really feel like people should watch. I'm very, very hopeful that we will get some type of generic manufactured FDA regulated and approved drug in place of compounds here, especially for the price differences, especially when we have people like Blue Cross Blue Shield that we covered last week that's putting out studies that show that 58% of their participants in Blue Cross Blue Shield are not staying on the GLP-1 after 1 month's time. Therefore, they are using studies like that to justify why they are removing coverage for it. Personally, I think that I've not seen the full study. I've seen an article on the study. I've not seen the full study, so I'm not really sure what they based it on, if it's just their own personal prescribers, if it's within one state, if it's across all states. I will try to search and see if it's findable now. I've not been able to find it yet. If you do find it before I do, link it down below. I'd love to take a gander at it. But I do feel like doing a study like that in the time of a shortage of a drug is a little biased. You are doing a study when you know that a lot of your plan participants cannot locate a drug, and therefore they are finding other options such as compounds that they are having to pay for out of their own pocket. So it may not be that they actually came off of the drug at 1 month. It may be that, hey, after paying $1,200 plus for the month, they decided that going for a compound that was slightly or much cheaper was going to be a lot better for them out of their own pocket. I do know people personally that were paying the $25 or $40, even without the savings card, that could not locate it, that just said, you know what, forget it. And then they are also paying more for a compounded drug. And so a time of shortage is not really when you should be doing a study like that. I feel like that was just a biased study to try to justify the end of coverage, basically. Also, I did mention that Eli Lilly stock continues to go up. In the continuation of the Eli Lilly stock going up, they are also sending other stocks tumbling, such as ResMed, which is a medical device company, specifically one that makes the masks for sleep apnea. Last week there was a final report out with the final phase 3 clinical trial study of Tirzepatide with the combination of sleep apnea benefits and how sleep apnea patients no longer need a mask after taking Tirzepatide. That nice little study that got published out by the FDA sent the ResMed stock tumbling. Denmark is now looking at how they're going to restrict Ozempic volume, how much each of the patients can obtain at one time within their country. They're having a hard time with patients going and, I guess, stockpiling as to why they are in shortage with Ozempic. I already mentioned our Shanghai and our Zealand pharmacy, and now I'm going to go into the ADA, so the American Diabetic Association conference they just had this past week in Orlando. There was lots of different GLP-1 data that was presented at this conference, and there are over 27, yes, 27 different drugs for both diabetic patients as well as obesity and weight loss that were presented at this one conference. I would have loved to have been there. I need to figure out how I can get in on some of that so that I can figure out what's in our pipelines here. But I did think that that was very promising, that we have so many doctors going presenting what they feel like were great findings, or our pharmaceutical companies going and educating our doctors on, hey, here's what we have in our pipeline. Here's what we have coming up. Now, I will say that I don't feel that Florida is the best place for everybody to focus. But But as long as they had a good time, maybe they were in good spirits and they were receiving the message in full. Now I'm going to go into my week 18 results. They were a lot better this week than they have been in previous weeks. I am kind of in that last week of not needing a Cosentyx, and then I'll need a Cosentyx starting next week. So this is my 1 week a month that I really have that I lose what weight I would probably typically lose if I was not on Cosentyx. And so I lost 2.4 pounds from last Wednesday to today, and I am at minus 36.6 pounds total. So I'm almost to the 40 plus pounds that I gained during the Cosentyx, getting that back off. I did gain a little bit of weight on Humira and Enbrel as well before those, because I was on steroids for 6 months throughout that process of trialing Humira and Enbrel. And so I still do have a little bit more that I need to go to get what I call my autoimmune treatment weight off. Beyond that, it's just weight that I had from stress, from having to move, the weight that I gained from having children. And so I do still have a lot of weight to get off. I am not someone that, like, once I get 40 pounds off, I'm like, okay, I'm there. I still have a lot of weight on me that does have to come off. Now, some of the benefits of having almost 40 pounds off of me, I'm not having as much back pain. I'm not having as much hip or knee pain. I'm not having as much throbbing. I say that all of my joints have heartbeats because if I'm not on my Cosentyx, it feels like every single joint in my entire body is throbbing. Because I have ankylosing spondylitis with axial spondyloarthritis, there is inflammation in my hip and spinal joint right here at the sacral joint. That inflammation can kind of affect the nerves that run throughout your body, that can also affect all the other joints throughout your entire body. It's not fun at all. I've had very, very bad days where I could not even get up. I was hurting just where I was, much less trying to get up, hurt worse, or felt like I was like locking in place with my joints, because you can have, because of the inflammation in that area, you can have joints that are trying to fuse together, which they call bamboo spine, and it makes it very difficult for you to try to move and stay functional. So part of, what I've gone over in the past about maintaining your muscle mass, for instance, these drugs are not just about not eating more. And I absolutely hate when people say, oh, these drugs just make you not want to eat. If you actually go back and look at all of this paperwork, within a lot of these, it will ask, did they have decreased appetite? They will ask, did you have decreased appetite? Some of them call it a fulfilling, did you experience this decreased appetite? And on this one, for instance, they only had 10.8% that said that they had decreased appetite. On the Tirzepatide, at the 5 milligrams for decreased appetite, they were 9.4. Then at the 10 milligrams, they went to 11.5%. And then all the way up to the 15 milligrams, they were back down at 8.6%. And so when people say all these drugs do is just make you not want to eat, I can 100% tell you, I eat more now than I ever have before, ever. I eat high density filling foods. When I was on keto, I was not eating whole potatoes. I was not eating corn. There's no way you couldn't. I love those things. I love potatoes. I love corn. You could not pay me to eat those things when I was on a keto diet. I ate the low carb vegetables, which in hindsight, I ate a whole lot of cauliflower. I ate a whole lot of broccoli. I would occasionally eat green beans, but I would like grimace over like the carbs in green beans as I was eating them. It was bad. I eat green beans now. I eat peas within reason. I eat chickpea pasta because there's a lot of protein in it. You could not pay me to eat pasta when I was on a keto diet. And so in the upcoming weeks, I'm going to kind of like go backwards a little bit, because I've gotten some messages from people about, can you explain what it is this drug actually does for you. And so I'm going to go back next week, either next week or the week prior, or the week after that. I'm going to go over, okay, here's what a typical day of eating looks like for me. I'm going to go over my keto background. I'll show you guys the weight loss that I lost doing keto. I'll go through carnivore, I'll go through the vegan phase, and I'll go through, of course, how I eat now. How I eat now is I eat a whole lot more. I know what I can eat. I know when I can eat it. I'll even go through some of the devices again that I did go. If you go back to this video, you'll see some of the devices. I will go more in depth in some of those. I am talking to a couple more brands as well. I'm trying to work out getting you guys some better deals just so that you have them and they're here for you, because these are all things that I use. You know, the gym vitamins, I take these. You know, I do deals. The Michelle McDowell clothes, I wear them. I try to do deals with brands that I use, that I know, that I like, that I love, that I would gift. I'm not going to do a deal with like a random brand that makes absolutely no sense for this channel. And that's, or for me to even share with you. I mean, even, and you guys might make fun of me and that's okay, but even my reflexology socks, I love them. And I reached out to them and asked would they sponsor a YouTube video for me, because I loved their socks so much. I get a foot rub every single night with those things. So that's all I'm really going to go over today. I'm going to go through and let you guys see my injection from today, which is my week 19. I'm still on the 2.5 milligrams. I will not be moving up to the 5 milligrams for another week. What's very odd, and you all tell me down in the comments below if you've experienced this as well, now that the drugs are no longer in shortage, when I did call my Caremark, they previously told me, CVS Caremark, they previously told me that I could only have 28 days at a time. Now they've bumped it up to 63 days at a time. I'm not really sure why it's 63. And I said, well, wait a minute, I do have a prescription for 84 days. And they said, no, you can only have 63 days on hand at a time. And they kind of lifted a hold for me. And so I currently have 2 boxes of the 5 milligrams on hand. That's just kind of ready for me to use. I'm not sure why they let me fill 2 of them at once when my prescription was only for 1 month. But I'm not going to question it. I'm just going to take it and just trot on my way and go. So I do have at least 2 months worth of 5 milligram already on hand, and I have an additional week of 2.5 before I start that. I want to finish my 2.5 before I move over into the 5. And of course, I will let you all know if rotating over into the 5 milligram this second time now, because if you recall, I did 4 weeks on 2.5, 4 weeks on 5, and they were going to go ahead and bump me up to 7.5 when I first started. Then I was on 2.5 for multiple weeks. I will let you all know if I have any kind of additional side effects or the same side effects that I had before rotating from the 2.5 up to the 5 this time. My hopes are that I do not, because I have been on this for so long, but you know, knock on wood, we will see. So again, I hope that you guys can take advantage of the 50% off that we got for you all from Daily Gym. You can go and claim this at dailygym.com/KetosisMom, and also input the code KetosisMom at checkout to make sure that you get it. I will see you guys next time, and have a great week, everybody. Bye, y'all.